What we're going to be doing is taking a look at the basics of the position transform property, both how we can change the position of our layers, shapes, or other compositions, and how we can actually animate this property to make our images move. So to start off with, if you haven't been on this channel before, we do a whole range of different tutorials for both After Effects and Photoshop. We will also have more tutorials for other Adobe software coming soon, so make sure you stay subscribed in order to make sure you never miss a video. As you can see, I've already set it so that our anchor point actually snaps to the center of our shapes. And what I'm going to do is quickly go to the selection tool by pressing V on my keyboard. This is both for Windows and Mac, by the way. And all I can do now is actually move our shape. So as you can see, when I actually move our shape, we're already changing the position properties of this shape, but not necessarily the position of our layer itself. So this is one thing to bear in mind when you're using shapes in After Effects. You actually have transform properties for the shapes themselves, and then you also have transform properties for the shape layer itself too. So you can actually change the position of the shape twice. Now, just before we go into depth on that, I'm just going to quickly unselect this and collapse our shape layer. Anytime you want to be able to bring up the position properties for any of the layers that you have open in After Effects, all you have to do is press the letter P on your keyboard. This is both for Windows and Mac. And as you can see, we now get the position properties in our timeline, which is exactly what we needed. So the first thing you need to know about the positions of layers in After Effects is that every layer has a position. So it's not only the shape that has a position, but as you can see, I also have a background layer. If I just quickly toggle this on and off, you can see what it actually is. And the position basically refers to the X and Y coordinates of our layer. If you're using a 3D space, this is slightly different. Then you also have a Z coordinate. But for now, we're just sticking to 2D. So I will do another video on how 3D works in the future. So if you're more interested in that, then do check out if that's on the channel already. But essentially, when we opened our position properties for all of our layers, we get these two values on the right-hand side. And these two values basically refer to where our layer is positioned in relative to the x-axis and the y-axis. Now, if I just quickly select our background layer, I'm actually using a 4K composition at the moment. If I just press Command and K on my keyboard, or Ctrl and K for Windows in order to bring up the composition settings, as you can see, I have a UHD 4K 25 frames per second composition with a width of 340 pixels by 2160 pixels in height. And these two values are very, very important. And this is slightly where maths comes into play in After Effects. Now, as you know, if you're maybe used to programs such as Photoshop, every image consists of pixels. So we have a whole load of pixels going right, and we have a whole load of pixels going down. And these are basically shown by these two values. So the width has a pixels of 3840, and then the height 2160. And these pixels are basically little dots that make up an image when we look at them all together. So I'm just going to press OK because I don't actually want to change any of those properties. So when we look at the position of our background layer, these two coordinates, the X and Y coordinates, actually refer to the position of our anchor point. So the anchor point is basically where all of the transform properties for this layer are controlled from. So if I were to scale this layer by pressing S on my keyboard, it will actually scale from this point. So as you can see, it's getting smaller, getting closer to that point, and it actually expands from that point too. I'm just pressing Command and Z to undo that, and P to bring back up the position properties. So as you can see, at the moment, it's telling me exactly where this anchor point is positioned. It's at 1920 by 1080. And 1920 is exactly halfway through our 3840 pixels. And then 1080 is also the half of 2140. So as you can see, it's currently positioned in this center point. But if I were to move our background to the left, perhaps going slowly closer to the top left-hand corner, as you can see, these positions now changed because the anchor point is no longer located at 1920 by 1080. Instead, this time it's now at 831, which is this position here, and 480, which is the Y value going up and down. So the Y-axis is going from bottom to top, and the X-axis is going from left to right. Now, one really handy tool that After Effects has is if, for example, I want to quickly be able to recenter the position of my layer, then all I have to do is go to Align in this right-hand panel here. And as you see, it says Align just underneath Effects and Presets. And when I open that panel, it actually gives us a whole load of options in order to be able to align our layer to our composition. So if you quickly press on here, you do also have selection, but that doesn't apply right now. But basically these ones on the left allow us to align our layer horizontally. So that's affecting this x-axis value that we have. And these ones on the right allow us to align our anchor points on the y-axis, which is this second value here. So if we wanted the edge of our layer to be aligned to the left-hand side of our composition, then as you can see, it's now going to be snapping to this left-hand side. And if I wanted to snap to the bottom, because I want to recenter my image, I can press on this one, which aligns to the bottom and changes the vertical position of our composition. Now, another easy way is if, for example, I want to change our second layer, so our shape layer, I'm just going to select it in the bottom left-hand corner here. Say if I quickly drag this one slightly further out and I actually wanted to center it, then actually all I have to do is press this middle one to align it horizontally, and then this one on the right to align it vertically. As you can see, our anchor point isn't actually fully positioned in the center of our shape layer here. So in order to do this, all you have to do is press Y on your keyboard, hold and drag it, and press Command in order to snap it to the center. As you can see, it's now realigned. So that's just a quick way to be able to change the position values of your layer. And as you can see, they're now both set to 1920 by 1080, because if I actually just go to the selection tool and select the background, you can see that the anchor points are actually centered for both images right to the center of our composition. So how can we actually animate the position of our layers? So take this shape layer, for example. Let's actually move it. If I just make sure I'm on the selection tool, which the shortcut to was V for both Windows and Mac. And if I just hold it and hold Shift on my keyboard in order to align it vertically to the center and just move it slightly to the left here. Say I wanted our shape to actually transition from left to the right in, let's say, 3 seconds. Well, in order to be able to animate this position change, all we have to do is, once again, make sure that we have the position properties open. So if you don't, then press P on your keyboard. Then just to the left of where it says position, you have this small stopwatch. If you just press on that once, as you can see, it was currently grayed out, but now it is blue. And this basically means that we're now animating this layer using keyframes. And as you can see, where our indicator, our blue indicator is, it's actually created a keyframe for the position property. And this keyframe basically holds two numbers, an X and Y value. And if I hover over it, it gives you a small box on the right hand side, which shows you two values. So first of all, you have the timestamp, exactly where the keyframe is. And then you have two numbers, which is the second set of values, which is the X coordinate and the Y coordinate. So this keyframe is basically a stamp that says at 0000, so 0 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds, and 0 frames. The position of this layer needs to have an X value of 948 and a Y value of 1080. Now, if I wanted this to be slightly different, all I have to do is actually move the layer. As you can see, this keyframe will now, if I hover over it, say something slightly different. And as you can see, it now says that at 000, you have to have a x-axis of 1629 and a y of 1458. So it's basically a stamp that says at this time, you need to have a position of this. So if I just quickly press Command and Z, can go back to the 948 by 1080. And then all I have to do is move our time indicator to 3 seconds. And what we said was after 3 seconds, we want the position of this shape to be on the right. So all I have to do is either hold and drag and hold Shift in order to keep it on this vertical axis and move it to the right. And as you can see, we already get this small line that indicates there is some travel going on. Or another way you can do it is if I quickly press Command and Z, you can actually go to these two values on the position itself. So you can actually either type in a new number, so say 1500. As you can see, it will then move this far. This is not as far as we wanted, but it's just an example. And as you can see, if I quickly press on the position itself, it also shows that line that indicates this is how far it will move. If I press Command and Z, another way you can do it is you can actually hover over the number itself. And when your cursor changes to this small arrow pointing right and left, if you hold to the right, it will move your layer to the right. And if you go left, it will actually move your layer to the left. So you can just keep going until you're happy with the position. And this won't change the Y value because we haven't actually touched that number. And when you're happy, all you have to do is release. So if I just quickly move our indicator back to the start and press spacebar in order to play our animation. But once it's done, as you can see, the position of our layer is now changed from left to right within the space of 3 seconds. And as you can see, if I hover over the second timestamp, it now says at 3 seconds, you need to have these X and Y position values. So this is essentially how you can animate the position of your shape. Now, what does this line actually mean that appears next to our shape? Now, all of these dots are actually indicating all of the frames that are passing between 0 seconds and 3 seconds. So at the moment, I have it set to 25 frames per second. So that means that there are 25 frames between 0 seconds and 1 second. So there'll probably be 25 frames within this space, this first third, and then another 25 and another 25, which means there'll be a total of 75 frames passing and 75 dots to represent each one of them. Now we also have these two slightly larger dots that appear just to the left of our right-hand keyframe and slightly to the right of our left-hand keyframe. These basically allow us to change the path of our position. So as you can see at the moment, it's just taking one smooth path from left to right. But let's say between these two dots, I actually wanted our shape to move slightly up and then come back down. All I have to do is hold on this small dot. And as you can see, I can actually curve our path. I can do the same on the right hand side. And as you can see, I can create a curve that now goes from left to right. So if I now go ahead and play our animation, as you might have already guessed, it's actually going to move up and down just by changing those two things. So this is just another easy way in order to change the direction of our animation without having to actually go ahead and keyframe all of these individual dots separately. So those were the fundamentals of the position transform parameter in After Effects, how you can change the position of your layers and how you can actually animate those positions to different keyframes. I could obviously now go ahead and move to other points in our composition and other times to create further keyframes and actually move it to those positions in time. And you can create as many keyframes as you want in order to change the position as many times as you want. So it's possible to be very creative and actually move your shape all over the place. Do let me know in the comments below if you have any questions, and do remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to make sure you never miss a After Effects tutorial. We also have a playlist on the channel purely dedicated to After Effects, so if you're interested in learning more about After Effects, then do remember to check that out.